This episode is brought to you by Padaris, empowering transport planners everywhere. See padaris.com/podcast for details. Today's podcast guest experience begins back in 1996 with a Bachelor of Science at the University of Reading, followed by a Master's in Transport and Highways Engineering from Imperial College London, all whilst getting to grips with his first role from 1999 at SBA. That's the then acquired Savile Bird Axon, now amalgamated to WIG. 2009 brings a highways executive role at Sainsbury's Supermarkets until he reached April 2013, joining Vectos in London as an associate director, appointed director then in 2018, but Vectos now sold or joined SLR in March of 21. Looks like you love a buyout, Stephen, or you know a thing or two about mergers.
Yes, I've been through perhaps more than many people will. And when you count the merger of my family with my wife's family after our wedding, that's 3 and counting.
Stephen, Eyton, the Transport Director of Vectos, now SLR Consulting. Welcome to the show. What of a mess. That was a long intro. Is it fully SLR now?
It is. As of the 1st of July 2023, Vectos ceased to be a trading name. So it is SLR, all systems go.
Excellent. I use the word sold, acquired, or amalgamation. That's the action or the process of uniting or merging two or more things. Yes, I had to Google that up to be precise. Is that what really happens? Is it a simple buyout transaction for, let's say, strategic purposes, combining your both sort of cultural connections and I would hope offerings to the client? Or is there always more to it, like, I don't know, cash?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things to it. I think the key thing with the Vectos SLR merger was that we both recognised that the biggest challenge facing the development industry at the moment is achieving zero carbon. And so our values in that regard were aligned. We approached business in the same way. We place a lot of emphasis on getting the right people and building relationships with our clients. Cross-selling, they work for a lot of clients that we wouldn't normally have got access to. Equally, their footprint in the development planning industry was not as large as Vectos's. So there was a great opportunity for both sides there. And yes, there was money involved.
What would be the point otherwise? Let's just go back some 20 years plus. Let me just ask you straight away, where did you believe that your career was heading when you finished your degree or master's? I always kind of love this question, going back to where it all began. Were you sort of ambitious and full of determination to change the world? What was your vision back then?
That's a very good question. I think looking back, did I have a strong desire to change the world? I think probably not. I think what I did have a desire to do was to go out into the world, learn things, find a job, a career that excited me, challenged me, rewarded me, got me to meet some great people. I don't think I had one thing in mind, but I knew that what I thrived on was challenge and meeting people. And that's really what I was looking for.
And who was an influence back then? Was your mother or father? Did they play a part in the education? I don't know. Was transport in the family or engineering? Why did you go down the transport planning route?
It's a very good question. My dad was a physicist, and my mum worked in oral surgery. My mum wanted me to be a doctor, which led me to study the 3 sciences at A level. I quickly decided I didn't want to be a doctor. But I quite enjoyed microbiology, and that was my first degree.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's unusual. But actually, my journey into transport planning had started a long time before my microbiology degree. When I was 15, I undertook the Duke of Edinburgh Silver Award, and the examiner for the expedition part of the award happened to be Mike Axon of Savile Bird and Axon Transport Planners. And I met this enthusiastic, likeable, friendly chap on top of a mountain in the Lake District. thought nothing more of it. He signed off my expedition report, and so I passed that part of the award, and then sort of carried on with my studying at school and through A levels and into microbiology. And I finished my degree, decided I didn't want to do a PhD because that meant spending all of my time in a lab mixing colourless liquids, which was pretty dull in my view. And so I was thinking about my next step, and it came through a family friend that Mike Axon and Salva Burton-Axon were looking for an office admin assistant, somebody to take reports to the printers, for example. They said, would you like to do it? Would you like us to pay for you to travel to London and to do a job in London? And I thought, why not? Got involved in the project work, and there we go.
That's incredible that relationship is still ongoing.
Yes, Mike is one.
Yeah,
Sorry. Mike is one of the senior directors at SLR now. So I
that's
work
right.
with him
Yeah,
today.
that's right. That's an incredible story. Um, I'm a huge believer that success leaves clues. People who succeed at the highest level are doing something different to everyone else. It's an impressive feat, Stephen, to make director inside of 18 years, let alone with a business the size of around 150 staff. What's going on? Is common sense at play here? Is it intellect or just hard work? Can anyone get there?
It's a good question. I think anyone can get there, and good companies are meritocracy. So if you're worthy of being a director, you will be a director. But it does take hard work. I think, sure, you do need to be smart, but being smart in itself isn't enough. You need to be able to build relationships with people, whether that's your co-consultants, your clients, your colleagues, the people that make decisions about planning applications. You need to be able to find a way to get them to trust you and listen to what you say and believe in what you say. And that sort of softer side of the skills isn't something that everyone always has. You can learn from your superiors and your peers, but you need a combination. You are really a master of many trades if you're going to become a director in transport planning.
Thanks for allowing us to get to know you perhaps a little bit better, Stephen. Let's go straight into some of the questions you're here to answer. Firstly, let me just ease you in gently with your current view of development planning. Is it all still making sense out there? Maybe give us an insight or an idea of a few of your biggest frustrations daily that you see and how you deal with them.
I think it is, there's a lot in the press at the moment about development planning. There's been, because of the local elections, basically affecting the ability of people to drive their cars has become a hot political issue. And I think that's a key thing. That's a big source of frustration, is that for planning applications, you do some technical work, you go out and persuade stakeholders, and they make a decision that the impacts of whatever development you're proposing are acceptable. What you often find, however, is that politicians, councillors, members of planning committee who have an agenda themselves, or indeed have been wound up by people that might be affected by your development, or simply just don't like the idea of the development that you're promoting, that often can influence officers in the way that they respond to you and in the judgments they make, and that is frustrating. And I think you have to sometimes put yourself in their shoes because they're overworked. Most highways authorities are under-resourced, and they have all of these pressures. So I think that's really the biggest frustration is when you're working on a project, or indeed you're promoting a case, and it is irrefutable logically, and officers ought to agree with that, but they are influenced by politicians and they don't agree, and that can be enormously frustrating.
What are the more common mistakes you see transport planners making today?
I think there's two mistakes that I see commonly. The first is not understanding the importance of policies that affect developments. When we prepare transport assessments or transport statements, we often cite the development plan policies. Now, often people copy and paste them from other reports, which is fine, but it's seen as a sort of a part of the report that's kind of a tick box exercise. It is very, very important to remember that that is not why you're quoting the policies. The policies are the ones that your development, the project you're working on, will be judged against. Now, if you've not quoted the right policies, if you haven't demonstrated in your work how you accord with the policies, or if you don't provide a justification as why it's not necessary to you to do so, you won't get where you want to be. So my number one tip is when somebody asks you to do a policy section of a transport report, pay attention to it and think what policies you include and why you're including it. The other tip is when you're asked to do a piece of work, the piece of work you do and you hand to the person that's reviewing it, you should be happy for them to literally send it out the door, to issue it unchanged. You shouldn't provide your senior colleagues, people working with you on the project, with stuff that you're not happy to be sent out in that way. Checking your work is essential, and it is, I would say, the number one frustration of senior transport planners.
I guess a lot of that comes with a degree of confidence, I suppose. But are you suggesting that perhaps somebody, at least not a graduate, 2-3 years in, maybe should be sort of confident in their ability?
I think so, and I think it's I say it to people that are at all levels. It's just good practice to make sure that you check your work. A lot of what we do is technical, and it results in numbers being produced. But if you put numbers in a report, it is good practice to read the report. And oftentimes you'll read the report and you'll see some numbers and you'll be like, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't logically make sense. And if it doesn't logically make sense, chances are the numbers aren't right. So you need to go back and look at the numbers. So it's very, very important to understand what we're doing, the case you're trying to make, because that's why you're being asked for the numbers. And if the numbers don't support that when somebody thinks they should, there is a chance the numbers aren't right. And so checking them is vital.
I think that's invaluable, Stephen. Let's actually pull that back even further and flip it. What is the one thing maybe any lesser experienced transport planners need to understand quickly, or maybe adapt to if they want to excel quickly, let's say in development planning?
I think it's understanding why we are doing what we're doing. Often, I think junior staff are asked to do tasks, and when they're asked to do tasks, I think it is a good idea to ask the person that's asked you to do the task, why are you doing it? How does it fit in with the strategy, with the case that you're making? Not just doing the task, because sometimes you can do the task in one way and the answer, which is right, doesn't necessarily fit with the strategy that's being enacted. If you did it another way, the answer, which is also right, fits with the strategy. So I think making sure that the person that's briefing you is briefing you on why they're asking you to do the task is a top tip. And if they're not briefing you, ask. And if you're not confident that you understand the strategy that's being promoted for the case, if you like, or the planning application, ask.
Just moving on from that, technical skills aside, how do you personally recognise a strong or a good transport planner, whether at committee, local authority, stakeholder meeting, or maybe one of your employees? And we're not going to name anyone here, but again, I'm a firm believer success leaves clues. What are the signals that you see?
I think the signals that I see and what sets strong transport planners out is they are able to do the technical work, they're able to understand the technical work, but they can explain it in a way that anyone that they talk to can understand it. Um, and by that, I mean, it could be a local resident who is concerned that the development on the site next to their house is going to result in traffic chaos, is often what's said. And it's explaining what the numbers mean, why that isn't necessarily the case, and what you're doing to minimise the risk of that happening. It's speaking at planning committee. It's going to a public exhibition where you've got a business that might be saying, well, you're going to reduce footfall passing our front door, and then you can explain that actually in the round you'll be bringing more in. So it's really that technical and ability to talk to people and explain things in a way that they can understand. It's both sides of the coin.
Sure. I would hope that you would develop as a maturing transport planner, you would develop those technical skills, you would kind of nurture their career. But why don't you try and maybe share some of the softer skills that we should be learning, almost kind of away from the job, that's also going to help them in transport planning? What other skill sets do you look for maybe when you're hiring, or you just want to see developed?
I think it's all about relationships, and by that I mean it's the relationships with your colleagues, the people that are doing work with you, the people that are managing you. It's relationships with your client, relationships with the co-consultants, part of the team that you put together to deliver planning applications. It's also relationships with highways officers. As I said earlier, they're overworked, they're understaffed. I think the best way to build relationships, in my experience, is to talk to people. And I think it's very, very tempting to email people. And I think what we often find is that if you email an officer that is overworked and short on time, that just sits in their inbox. Whereas if you make the effort to phone them and try and talk to them and trying to establish a human-to-human, person-to-person relationship, the next time you want something from them or have something to try and agree with them, they think, that person took the time to call me. They didn't just send me an email. And it's as simple as that. Now, many authorities don't make it easy. They hide the phone numbers and it's very difficult to find them.
Yeah.
But I would strongly advise people trying to build relationships, particularly with highways authorities, to find contact numbers and call people.
I think it's such an important skill, regardless, not just within transport planning, but in any sector, and in fact, throughout life. I think if you can, encourage relationships, grow them, nurture them, as you say, on a phone with that human connection, I think it's invaluable. Not just in transport planning. This episode of Practical Perspectives is brought to you by Pedaris. Planning, engineering, and stakeholder engagement seamlessly integrated into the cloud. To discover how Pedaris is helping the likes of Arup, WSP, and Sistra plan smarter, faster, and more collaboratively, head over to pedaris.com/podcast today. Stephen, how often do you meet frustration or even failure? And I'm aware it's a bit of a wide question, but what can your experiences teach us, and maybe how we can deal with it?
I think it's as we talked about earlier, there is a lot of frustration in this, and I think you do sometimes fail to agree with highways officers. You fail to get highways officers to reach the conclusion that you want them to reach, and they'll object to planning applications. And sometimes when they object to planning applications, local planning authorities will refuse planning permission. And you're, as a transport planner, the person that's brought on to try and make sure that doesn't happen from a transport perspective. I think there's always something to learn in that. I mean, sometimes you might think, when they come to the decision that they don't want to agree with you and they explain why, you might think, actually, if we'd have explained this slightly differently, maybe they would have understood it better and reached a different conclusion. I think Sometimes it's because politicians have interfered, and there's not a lot that you can do about that. You have to just take it on the chin. And if your client has the appetite for it and the advice is that actually the application shouldn't be refused, then you know you get a second chance at it. Because if you're confident in your case and that you can make it at appeal, then you might actually get the result that way. In all of this, I think there's ups and downs, and as long as the downs teach you something and you take something away from it, you can't win everything, as much as I as much as I might like to.
Staying with frustration, would you mind sharing a mistake or a challenge you faced in your career, if you're brave enough to admit it, and you don't have to answer this question, and maybe some of the important lessons you learned from it? And I'm well aware I'm throwing you under the bus here, Stephen.
Yes, I think I won't give you the actual detail of it, or indeed when in my career it occurred. Nevertheless, I am happy to answer that question. There was a project I worked on, and I was doing the technical work, and in applying a factor, I applied it incorrectly, and it resulted in halving the traffic generation estimates. So they should have been twice what I said they were.
Yeah.
They were then fed into models, and the models formed the basis of a transport assessment and a planning application. It was refused. The application was refused, and a decision was made to appeal that refusal. When it got to public inquiry, the team acting on behalf of the council identified the mistake and pointed out that it meant that the modelling that we'd done wasn't a true representation of the situation with the development in place.
What happened next?
Thankfully, despite the significant embarrassment to my senior director at the time, the frustration of the client, myself and others in the team went away, corrected it all, and came up with a solution that would deal with the correct level of traffic generation. That was submitted to the inquiry, agreed with the other side, and actually the inspector and the Secretary of State found in favour of our client.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
It was an enormously
brilliant,
difficult time.
What a recovery. What a recovery.
Huge amount of effort and late nights. Obviously, some hard words from my director at the time, as you can imagine.
Let's move on. Let's move on from that quickly.
The thing I would just say, though, is I've never made that mistake again.
I bet you haven't. No, I bet you haven't. And listen, it couldn't have been that bad. You're still here to tell the tale,
yes.
And as a director as well. So, all right, let's move on. Hey, what about some lesser-known regulations, perhaps, or policy considerations that maybe significantly impact transport planning and highway design? Maybe you could share something that perhaps not everyone might know or be aware of, but probably should do.
Yes, I think this is in design terms, and it also affects the sort of speed with which a client can get on and build a development that they've got planning permission for. Public highway and public rights of way. Now, they are quite a dry subject, but they are very, very important, because if it's public highway or it's a public right of way, it's essentially an area over which the public have a right to move. Irrespective of who owns the land underneath it, the public have the right to move over it. If you want to develop on that land, which is your land, you can't do it without extinguishing the right of way to move over it. Often, this isn't found out until later on in projects, that there is an encroachment of public highway or indeed a public right of way. What it does mean is that you have to go through separate legal processes to the planning application process, and there is no guarantee that you can stop up or divert public highway and public rights of way just because you've got planning permission for a development. The key thing to think about is if you're amending access, or you're providing new access, or you're particularly looking at greenfield sites, are there, when you do your site visit, are there signs of a public right of way, finger signs? If there are, you need to get the public highway records, and you need to look at the definitive map of public rights of way, because knowing that they're there might mean that you can change your development design to avoid the need to move them or stop them up. And that can save a lot of time and a lot of risk to your client.
I wonder how many people actually knew that. I wonder if anyone's brave enough to leave the answer in the comments and maybe leave us their thoughts on that subject. Stephen, finally, what parting words of wisdom or encouragement maybe do you have for our listeners who want to take action? Or if we could even go back 20 years, what do you wish you knew back then than what you know now, and what would you do different? And I appreciate transport planning has come a long way in the last 20 years, but what would you do?
I think that's a very good question. I think transport planning has changed a lot. When I first started, it was all about traffic. It was literally how many vehicles will a development generate? What effect will that have on the road network? Now it is about how do we want people to live, to move around, and how do we design to ensure that they make the most sustainable choice when doing that. We prioritise pedestrians, we prioritise cyclists, we prioritise public transport, and at the very bottom of the list come cars. And I think that's changed a lot. I don't think the process of transport planning has changed. We still need to produce a case which looks at the implications of development and the impact on the transport network. We still need to present that to stakeholders. We need to convince stakeholders. That's not changed. I think it's frustrating. It's faster paced than it used to be. I think, back when I first started, I would write a letter, I would put it in the post, and 2 weeks later I'd get a response. Now emails are quick and everyone expects immediate responses. So timescales have come down, expectations have gone up, which can increase frustration and the potential for mistakes. But in all of this, it's tremendously rewarding. I've worked on a number of sites. I've shaped parts of London, which is the city I've lived in for the last 23 years. And I'm pleased to say that on some schemes where I have pushed for designs or management measures that will really influence the way that people live and work and travel, those will be built. And along the way, I've had great fun. I've worked with some brilliant colleagues and some great clients and co-consultants. So yeah, I would recommend it as a career. There's a lot to be gained.
Must be hugely rewarding. What's next for Stephen Eyton?
That's a good question. I've got a number of projects on at the moment, one of which is the regeneration of a significant site within Greater London. I've got some great staff, I've got great people, I've got great opportunities to work with different parts of the SLR business, working in different sectors that I've traditionally worked in. And Vectos as a brand had a very, very strong presence in the development planning market. Myself and the fellow directors of the transport planning team with SLR, we've now got the opportunity to build SLR's transport planning brand within the development planning industry. And that's exciting. That means going out, talking to people and promoting a great bunch of people working for a good company, doing good things.
Because you're far too young to retire and still have a long career ahead of you. And we wouldn't want you to retire yet anyway, Stephen. Stephen, just before I let you go, whilst doing my research, I heard you was a bit of an ardent skier and also an ex-drum and bass DJ. Could you quash those rumours or tell us or confirm whether they're true?
Your research is very thorough. Both of those things are correct. Yes, I came to skiing late. I didn't start skiing till I was 30, but fell in love with it immediately, and have been going as many times a season as I can ever since. In fact, despite the fact that it's only the 2nd of August, I've already got a ski trip booked for next season. And yes, drum and bass is my number one passion when it comes to music. You wouldn't necessarily expect that to look at me, but I did indeed DJ it, mostly in my bedroom, but oftentimes at parties under the DJ name Perpetual Motion.
I love the fact you actually just admitted that on camera as well. Stephen Eyton, thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Today's episode of Practical Perspectives has been proudly supported by Padaris, the trusted toolkit empowering transport planners everywhere to plan faster, smarter, and more collaboratively. Experience the future of transport planning today at padaris.com/podcast.